Hello and greetings, Joy Richu. You are joining me from Kenya, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, Joy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me and for opening up this conversation.
Fantastic. And Joy is a wonderful person, actually. I met her at the University of British Columbia, and as you know, on this podcast, we talk about personal finance, investing, and career insights. Joy has a remarkable career. She's can you say it?
An
Illustrator
illustrator?
and designer, right? But there's a particular way that you
Yes.
you like to say female African storyteller, right? So I like to put
Yes.
that.
Hello?
Yes, yes. What did you say?
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So Joy is an artist and illustrator. So she has worked with quite a number of big brands like Coca-Cola, MasterCard, the New York Times, and she is fantastic at doing art. But more importantly, when she does the art, she's telling quite a number of important stories, particularly about what is happening not only in Kenya but across the African continent and the world. Recently, Joy was actually in France, where she had an opportunity to be awarded um, the prize, where she was the first Kenyan to receive that award. Joy, you tell us more about that award that you recently won, and many more, awards that you have been winning. And Joy, do you want to tell us about your story? Like, who is Joy? I have the privilege, of course, of knowing you, Joy.
So, as Isaac has mentioned, my name is Joy Richu, and as Isaac mentioned a bit, I am very proud of being African, and I'm also very proud of being female. These are two parts of my identity that really feed into my work and feed into the stories that I tell and the way that I tell them. And that's why they're a big part of how I introduce myself as well. And I met Isaac at the University of British Columbia. I was studying creative writing. That's why I did my undergrad.
Yeah.
And after that, I went to the Vancouver Film School where I studied digital design. And so that's what led to my career now as an illustrator and designer.
Joy, that's very interesting. And tell me a little bit more because I thought like if you go to university, you complete your degree, why is it that you found it necessary to then go and do specifically design? Was it more of specialization? And it seemed like that's where, you then pivoted out, or carved out your career from when you went to Vancouver School of Film Making.
After graduating from UBC, the University of British Columbia, with creative writing,
Mhm.
I felt like I wasn't really, I hadn't really found my calling just yet.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to tell stories, but I wasn't sure if I wanted it to just be in the form of, say, writing a novel or writing a play or writing a screenplay. And I wanted to expand the tools that I could use to tell
Mhm.
stories. And so that's why I went to Vancouver Film School. And that really changed the course of my life because I realized, oh, you can tell stories using colors, you can tell stories using images, illustrations. And I just continued refining my craft since graduation until now.
That's wonderful. And you told me this story, Joy, of how you discovered one famous Kenyan actually who was on the, like at your school, but you had never heard about this Kenyan. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, so I guess why this is important is because it
Hmm.
was coming in the sense of the importance of examples and the importance of representation.
Hmm.
And so I went to film school and we had this assignment to look up and learn the stories of various prominent artists.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking down this list, and as I'm looking down the list, I realize, oh, that's a very Kenyan name I see there. And her name is Wangeshi Mutu. So I was
Hmm.
like, what? I can't believe that there's a Kenyan who is so prominent that I'm learning about her in school.
That is in
So I
Vancouver,
looked her
Canada.
up. Yes, yes. And I'd never heard about her all my life living in Kenya. Um, and so that really was inspiring because I was like, oh, there's actually people from where I'm from who are doing the things that I want to one day do and are incredible at it and are internationally renowned.
Yeah.
So that was a really amazing moment for me for sure.
And I'm glad now you are now internationally, well known, Joy. And tell us about the experience of actually working with big brands like Coca-Cola, MasterCard, the New York Times. That's big league stuff, Joy. Congratulations and well done for that.
Thank you. So in terms of the experience of it, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to work with these different brands, and specifically the people who I worked with on these different projects, because that's at the heart of every brand. It's the people.
Hmm.
And so I've been fortunate enough to work with very incredible teams in these different organizations. And I think what it's been reaffirming for me is sometimes you might not realize that the work that you're putting out there is having, like, anyone is seeing it. Like, for
Mm.
example, you might put something out and you don't get a response, and you wonder, oh, should I even be doing this thing? But I'm grateful to know that there's always people who are looking for artists and are looking for people online. And so that's the way I've been able to work with these different brands, is just continually putting myself out there and being open to the conversation when they do reach out and want to work with me.
That's fantastic. And I also like the posts that you share on social media, particularly on LinkedIn, Joy. And, the stories, the issues that you address in that. And just to add on what you said, the other time I got a client through LinkedIn, they just reached out. They messaged me via LinkedIn and said, "Hey, Isaac, I see you doing consulting. I'm an economist as well. So, can we work together? We have this project. Are you available?" I'm like, "Sure. Do you want me to send, my resume?" Said, "Oh, sure. No, it's fine. We know you, we know you."
Exactly.
So I was like, "Oh, so people actually get to they see sometimes people may not comment, but they see." And I read this report, Joy, and the audience for your own information that there are billions of users that are on LinkedIn and also in other social networks. And what happens is that each individual, when they come there, they are
Mm,
influencers, they are employers, they are potential clients. They are coming there with the specific intentions. So what it means is some people might be looking for art, might be looking
mm-hmm,
for, to hire someone. So I think the point is each time that I post or share something on social media, I'm very intentional about it. So that's quite
mm,
interesting that you got some, high
mm-hmm,
profile
mm-hmm,
jobs, from your posts, and you also have a website that we will also share on the comment section on the video so that people can also see the beautiful
mm,
artwork that you do and also support you because you do a very fantastic job. They can also purchase those art pieces. Now, Joy, tell
thank you.
me about your experience. You started here in Canada and then went back to Kenya, even though you were born in Kenya, and I'm sure you have traveled around the world. Tell me about the
Mm.
experience of this transition, you know, Kenya, and also living in Canada for I think maybe 4 or 5 years or even more. And then going back, how was this transition? Was it easy? And how did you go about it?
So I lived and went to school in Vancouver in Canada for a total of 7 years.
Hmm.
And so it had been after 7 years, even though through the years I used to come back for holiday or for Christmas or things of that nature.
Yes.
But coming back for me, I think it feels pretty much the same as leaving for the first time because
Mm.
when I went to Vancouver, for example, I knew, okay, fine, the culture is different, the people are different, the food is different.
Yes.
And coming back, I had to be aware of the fact that a lot has changed from since I left 7 years
Yes.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was understanding that I shouldn't expect to find the same country I left. I should expect also to find my friends have developed, they
Mm-hmm.
have advanced in their own lives.
Mm.
And so just being open to the change that would inevitably be there, I think
Mm-hmm.
was helpful in my transition back and just knowing it's just change. Change is change. And
It's
I've embraced
inevitable.
change before and I'll embrace it again. Yeah.
I like the fact that you took an open mind because, few people, at least from my network, would say, after college, I'm gonna go back to my home country and, start and launch my business. So, how easy was it? Like, did you just take off like this, or it took time? What were the challenges or opportunities that you then saw as you started running your business in Kenya? And now, of course, it's a global
So
brand.
yes. So I guess one thing to 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 mention before going into that is that when I went to UBC,
Mhm.
a lot of the conversation at that time was about brain drain. That was what a lot of the conversations, even in the African community, used to be about. It's about how there's so many brilliant Africans who move abroad for education, but choose to stay abroad. And as a result, a lot of innovation, a lot of ideas. I mean, there's ideas all the time everywhere, but by
Yes.
not coming back, there is that lack of impact that happens, that lack of potential impact. Um, and so that's something that I had in mind all along, understanding that the value of my education is how I apply it when I come to where I'm
Mm.
from,
Okay.
and then expand from there. So it hasn't been an easy experience, as with any business setup or any
Hmm.
worthwhile pursuit. I have been independent for 5 years now, which I'm grateful for.
Yes.
But at the start, it's never easy. It's always something different. It's always something new. You don't know if it's going to work.
Yes.
And I think the part of the goodness of not knowing if it's going to work is it makes you figure out how to make it work.
Makes you tick.
So, yeah. So that has been helpful in terms of just keeping me going. It's just knowing that I've chosen to do something and I want to see it through. Yeah.
Mm. And tell me, like, who are your clients? Of course, I've mentioned some. Do you have some other fellow Kenyans and Africans and other people from other parts of the world just, buying your work remotely or maybe in person? I know you have attended high profile events and I've seen you uh, sell and market your products, right, to big names. So do you have like other sections of the population who like and actually buy, your work?
So a lot of my clientele, as you mentioned, is businesses and brands.
Mhm.
That's t-shirt and merchandise.
Mhm.
But then I realized that maybe there's possibly a better way to go about that business model,
Mhm.
navigating what does a profitable approach to merchandising look like. But yeah, so I do sell t-shirts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And thanks for sharing that. Um, so now I'm curious, Joy, about the lessons
Mm.
specifically that you have learned, like in running a business. Like I know from our conversations, what were the challenges apart from, not knowing that it's gonna work tomorrow, and how did you, navigate through those? Maybe there are some other, other people who may want to, do storytelling, illustration, and the kind of work that you do. What insights would you say about, choosing that career?
So I guess the insight that I've learned over the years is that there's nothing that's easy.
Mm,
At least nothing that's worthwhile that's easy. And so regardless of the path that one chooses to take, for me, I'm an artist, but first off, art is very broad. You can be an
yes.
artist as an illustrator, you can be a musician, you can be a filmmaker. Anyway, whatever art one chooses to pursue, to do it successfully, it takes some sacrifices.
Yes.
And so, for example, for me, at the start of my career, when I left my job in advertising to pursue illustration,
Yes.
I was living with my parents and I was hardly
Mm,
going out. I was hardly buying things. I was just like with my computer every
wow.
day trying to make it work.
Wow.
And I really am therefore grateful for my family and their support in that sense, and that
Yes.
they believed that I could make something happen. But yeah, I think, if you commit,
Yes.
understand that you're going to have to sacrifice something,
Yes.
and just, be happy with that sacrifice as well. Yeah.
That's very important highlight, even in my own life, Joy. Thanks for sharing that because you were willing to go and stay with your parents, right? To cut back on quite
Yeah.
a number of things, going out and stuff. That means you were very
Yeah.
determined to succeed. And I'm really proud and happy for you that you are actually seeing the results. So do you want to tell us about the award that you recently won? What was it about, and um, what did you learn from that as well? The one that you got in France recently.
Um, so I recently became the first Kenyan to receive the Cannes Lions, which is a female acceleration program that helps Cannes Lions. Each year it selects a number of very high potential women from across the world.
Hmm.
And we engage in mentorship sessions, leadership, coaching, and just learning how to navigate the industry from a female perspective. And so I think it's been about a month now. I went to France for this festival,
Hmm.
and I was so inspired, like to an interaction all and I feel like there's something in that. Like when you see someone
Hmm.
who's doing amazing things and then you realize they're humans, this I look,
Yes.
they're right there. They're not a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
So that was really inspiring. Yeah, it was amazing.
I know you are very humble, Joy, and at this conference, people like Elon Musk were there, from what I gathered, right?
Yes.
So it was a high profile
Yeah.
event. I
Yeah.
experienced that similar experience. MasterCard sent me to Oxford to say business school. There was the Score World Forum. That was in
Yeah.
2015, I think. Yeah. And what
Yeah.
happened was that, I also met people from different parts of the world, storytelling. That's when I learned about this, that actually art can be used as a catalyst for positive change. I saw this artist from
Mm-hmm.
Egypt who had actually sparked change. I saw quite a number of people from all over the world who had actually, you know, um, who were very influential. That was the time that I also had the chance to see, Mama Gracia Machel, the late Desmond Tutu, and all these other people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also even meet
Mm-hmm.
the first
Yeah.
billionaire in my life, that was Jeff Score. So sometimes I actually understand what you are
Wow.
saying. Yes, because when you interact with people, it's a bit it's interesting because you network with people, right? But when you are just reading about
Mm-hmm.
people and when you actually get to interact with people, it brings in a layer of, I think for me, confidence to say, oh, actually, this is the
Mm-hmm.
person that I look up to. And you can ask them the questions, like, what is the secret behind this? And most of the time, they are happy to share. So that's very
Mm,
interesting. Now, is
yeah.
there anything that you like to share about what you have learned about, managing business or personal finance, as a business person? I'm sure, you work with people, so there might be payroll, there might be experiences that you may have learned do you want to share with us?
I guess in terms of finances, I think I guess I'll speak to the lesson that I think it's a lesson that I've had most of my life, but particularly in business, it's important.
Hmm.
And it's simply the fact that I mean, how do I say? Um, in a lot of the culture today, there seems to be a push to look a certain way or
Hmm.
to look rich very quickly.
Yes.
And so it can make you spend on things that might not actually be the wisest thing to spend on
Hmm.
right now or yet. And so, for example,
Mm.
that can feel like as soon as you get your first, say, million, okay, go
Yes.
buy a car, go buy
The most
super flashy
expensive one for that
jewelry.
matter.
Exactly. Like just show people that you've made it. But then in
Yes.
truth, I think there's something sweet about waiting until you actually have a real amount of money before you're spending like that. And so in the beginning, I think spend on the things that matter, spend on the things that add value to the long term success of your business or your
Mm.
brand. And these are things that are not always necessarily visible, right? And
Yes.
so, yes, it's an aspect of you need to look presentable. Yes, look
Of course.
presentable.
Mhm.
But then you don't need to show off, you
Yes.
don't need to flashy about it.
Yes.
Spend where investment reaps
Mm.
benefits in the so that would be my one advice is, spend wisely and spend on things that have a long-term impact on your life and your business.
That's profound, Joy. Each time that I check my Instagram, not to say it's bad, it's a personal choice,
Yeah,
right? But,
yeah,
I realize that, building wealth is different from looking rich because I think the most important
yes,
thing now is being able to have consistent cash flows that can, help you take care, whether it's your lifestyle and
yeah,
even in the stock market. I like investing in the stock market, as you know, Joy. And one thing that I've realized is that sometimes just waiting and saving
mm,
up, right? And waiting and
mm,
understanding the things that you are actually investing in, you can make a lot of money by just waiting, right?
yes,
I was looking
mm,
at the market today, the stock market, the
mm,
US stock market. Today there was a lot of volatility. The market it dropped. But because when the market was really going up, I was kind of like buying, the volatility index through ETF. When it went up, I made
mm,
a little bit of money, right? Because, then it went up. So just waiting, right?
mm,
And strategically positioning yourself, I think sometimes can be helpful. But not many people can afford to do that. It's a behavioral aspect. So
mm,
thank you for sharing that. So,
mm,
do you wanna
mm.
share some other, career advice to other youngsters who may be in a position where they are considering doing the work that you do? What is the most exciting part of your day, and what are the challenging times like for you?
The most exciting part of my days are usually the mornings. I think mornings are my favorite time of the day,
Mhm.
simply because creatively, at least for me, that's the freshest moment of the day. That's when, you've come from hopefully a restful night. And so your brain has had time to process what happened the day before. And
Yeah.
if there are any creative ideas, then you can execute them then. And so my advice to people who are leaning into the creative side of life is also to try and make use of that, very early
Hmm.
morning hour.
Hmm.
I found that it's challenging because, especially, so right now in Kenya, it's quite cold, and so
Yes.
if you wake up very early, you just are like, I should go back to bed. It's too cold. Uh,
Yeah.
but then having the discipline to wake up nonetheless, I think
Yes.
has profound positive ripple effects.
Yes.
So just make use of that morning time. I think it's a beautiful time to be creative.
Mm, that makes me curious.
Yeah.
So, usually, what is your typical day like, Joy? You wake up, you start with the most important thing that you want to do, and usually, what are your typical days like? What do you do then after that on an average day?
My on an average day, I like my mornings being pretty slow and being pretty
Mm,
peaceful.
mhm,
And so if it's waking up and um, writing or meditating or some other form of expression, and then some light exercise,
mhm,
and then I like to do a bit of my admin stuff in the morning because
mhm.
if I wait until the evening, I mean, if I wait until the afternoon, I'll be too tired.
Yeah,
And so any of the hard tasks, I'll do them in the morning. And so if
yeah.
it's, I need to send out a variety of emails, or I need to update my portfolio, or I
Uh-huh.
need to get out a block of work, I'll do it in the morning.
Yes.
Um, and in the afternoons, I will possibly read. And then
Mm-hmm.
in the evening, if I'm not doing anything social, I'll just do some work or make some art or spend time with my family or the people who I value and find important.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's typically a day.
Yeah.
That's pretty much every day for me. Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. I like the fact that you also start with the most, administrative work and most important tasks. For example, let's say you have payroll, you have to draft emails, important emails to clients, to, even partners and stuff. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, it's very important to just have something written down. I do that a lot. I like to have a calendar and also have a schedule
Mm,
because that also keeps me accountable to say, okay, out of these things that I had listed for my day, which ones did I
mm,
complete them? If not,
yeah.
then I roll it over, right?
Mm,
So, but if I don't have that, then there's no metrics to measure
yeah.
whether I'm making progress or not. So that's very, very interesting. So, is
Mm,
there anything that you like to share
mm.
about, also your experience now? I know you shared the experience going back in Kenya. What was your experience in Canada? Is there something that you can say that you have learned by also traveling around the world and sharing stages with big names and working for big corporations?
So one of the things that I valued most about my university education, especially at UBC,
Mhm.
is that I learned not what to think, but how to think. And I think
Mm,
that's one of the most valuable things an education can give you. So that when I was, and now I'm in different situations, it's not so much that there's a formula to solving every issue that happens or solving every brief, but then
yes.
there's a way to think that is more productive, that's more strategic, that's more fruitful. And so that's one of the things I really value about having had an education in Canada is I learned
Hmm.
how to think. And these are lessons that have continued to apply even in my day-to-day life here.
Hmm.
And I think as well, I think travel is such an important thing because,
Hmm.
for example, before I left Kenya,
Yes.
I don't think I was as Pan African and like proud of being African as when I
Hmm.
came back because there's something about I think if some like if an experience is all that you know, it's very easy to take it for granted and not see how
Yes.
valuable and beautiful it actually is. Right. And so before when I was living in Kenya where I grew up, I just thought that I'm just Joy, I'm just Joy. At
Yeah.
most I'm a Kenyan. I didn't
Yeah.
think very much past that.
Yeah.
But going from aware who you are and your identity is actually a really meaningful part of your experience of life. Then I got to really understand the value of really being proud of where I am.
Hmm.
So I'm happy that I went to school, and then I'm able to work where I work right now.
Mm, that's interesting, Joy.
Yeah.
And I remember, not to say like I didn't interact with other people from all over the world when I was at the University of British Columbia. When I would see you, we would chat. I remember I told you the story about, your brother Moses, that he
Yeah.
intentionally like, spent time and saying when we arrived actually at the University of British Columbia,
Mhm.
me and
Yeah.
my fellow scholar and said, guys, let's go out and have drinks. And I remember we went to a pub, but he was just sharing with us the experiences, like
Mm.
here, these are some of the things, the food, this is where you can get, like African food, if you so wish. So those
Mm,
things, and also now, even as you know, Joy, when we started the clubs to promote initiatives, about Africans, opportunities in Africa, the African Business Club, African Awareness Club, we realized that sometimes, your identity is your identity. And
mm,
there are also opportunities in Africa. That's why we,
mm,
started, as you know, the African Business Club, where we then invited people from, mostly from Africa and around the world to come and talk about opportunities
mm,
that are actually in Africa, in the technology sector, in the art
mhm,
sector, like in farming. There are lots of opportunities, but sometimes it takes you to bring people, together to learn from each other. And you probably may
mm,
have watched one of the podcasts with Wadzanai. She came on the
yeah.
podcast. She said she was born in Zimbabwe, and at that time Zimbabwe was still under colonialism from the British. And when she went to Kenya, her parents were, her father was an ambassador in Kenya, Zimbabwean ambassador to Kenya. That's when she realized that,
Mm,
oh, actually, black people can actually run institutions. They can actually be successful. They can be lawyers. They
yes.
can be doctors, right? So imagine if she had stayed,
Mm-hmm,
what then
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
if you are listening to this, I'm telling your story here. It was very profound. So she realized, like, wow, this is possible. So that's a very powerful
mm-hmm,
story. And even when
mm-hmm,
she went to the US, now you have, more exposure. The same with me when I was in Zimbabwe. That was my world, right? And then when I went to
mm-hmm,
the University of Zimbabwe in 2006, I met people from different parts of the country, and also some
mm-hmm,
folks from, even the African continent. It was even better when I then came to the University of British Columbia, which was more international. And so that kind of helps
mm,
and enriches your experience because you learn from other people. There are some things, in different cultures that you can learn. So that is very profound. So, is there
yeah.
anything else, Joy, from our conversation? I know we can talk and talk that you'd like to share with the audience.
Well, I guess we've talked about most of the things that come to mind. I don't know if there's something specific
Yes.
that you'd like to discuss or
Yeah, I think I would be curious to know, like, are there some other people from the African continent, other businesses that I will share your website. Are you mentoring other people? Let's say some people may want to reach out to you. I think they should be able to contact you via your website, right?
yes, they can contact me with my website.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for the privilege of your time. I know it's evening over there in Nairobi. I really appreciate your time, my friend. You have a wonderful evening. And to the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with my good friend Joy Richu. And I will put her website so that you can also support her work as well. May the markets be in your favor. Thank you and wishing you the best.